Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalize and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be. Welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we have another interviewee, which is very exciting because Joanna Lindenbaum is not only a highly regarded and highly successful coach, but she's also juggling that alongside being a mum of two, has a successful relationship, or at least that's what we're going to find out, whether it's successful or not. And we would love to ask her some questions about what she does, which in my mind is a trauma-informed somatic coach trainer, but obviously you can elaborate on that. And we'll work out exactly how she's used her tools to remain and become untriggered. So welcome, Joanna.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, I know I've just summarized your entire career in 5 words. That might not be correct. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, in your words, how you came to do what you do, what it is that you do, and why you feel that's important?
Absolutely. So I train mainly coaches, therapists, and other kinds of transformational leaders and teachers. And I really help them learn how to go deeper with their clients, learn how to get under the surface, get to the deeper fears, the shadows, looking at the wounds so that they can help their clients overcome the obstacles that are standing in their ways. And I know we all love our work, but I have to say, I love my work. I love working with practitioners. I love teaching people how to work somatically to get to that depth and to give trainers their own inner journey as we do it.
I love that. And in terms of giving people that inner journey, had you already started on your own healing journey? Because I know that for me, at least, that's what got me into this work. I didn't want other people to feel how I did before I started. Why did you get into this? Why is somatic work so important, for example, for you?
Yeah, such a great question. The reason why I even started my business is because this was 25 years ago. I was in my 20s. I was living in New York City. I had a full-time job at a museum. I was a curator. I had, actually achieved quite a bit for my mid-20s. I felt like I was living the dream. And on the side, I started going to women's rituals. I had read in a catalog about women's rituals, and there was something about it that called to my soul. And so on the weekends, in the evenings, I was going to rituals, and eventually I started leading rituals, still with my full-time job. And I started thinking to myself, I want to make this into a business. I want to leave the art world, and I want to support women to go deeper, have these experiences. But even though I had that desire, there was another part of me that said, no, you can't. You have to stay in your traditional career, which wasn't even that traditional with art history. And this went on for months, this back and forth. And then I woke up one day, and I was living on my own at the time. And I was getting ready for work. I was late. I didn't look in the mirror, but I was brushing my teeth, and I realized something was weird when I was brushing my teeth. I didn't know what it was. I got to work. I went to my cubicle, didn't see anyone. And then around 10, a colleague of mine came to my cubicle to ask me a question. She said, Joanna, there's something wrong with you. You need to go look in the mirror right now. I ran to the bathroom, and it looked like I had a stroke. Half of my face was drooping. And I went to the doctor. He took one look at me. He said, you have Bell's palsy. For anyone that doesn't know, the facial nerves in half the face stop working. And he said, take this medication and you'll be fine. But I knew that it wasn't about taking medication, because of the inner work that I had already done, I knew that half the face doing one thing and half the face doing another was about this internal struggle that I was having, but that I wasn't addressing, that I just kept on sweeping it aside. For me, I knew it wasn't right to take the medication. I'm not advocating people shouldn't take medication. But for me, what I knew was it's time to actually go deeper with everything I was teaching in ritual with myself. It was time to really make friends with the fear of failure, of not complying with my parents' expectations in terms of what success is. It was time to make friends with the fear of being different. I come from a family of immigrants. We always tried to fit in because of it. And lo and behold, as I did that work, my face got better and I was able to finally leave my job and do the work that I do now.
Wow. That's amazing. It sounds quite similar to my story, actually. So I definitely resonate with that. It took me 10 years. We were talking about it the other day, just from my whole 30s was like resistance against this change of knowing there was something else and knowing there was a different purpose and there was something deeper to do. And then having this one foot in the past and in corporate world, etc.
Yeah, it can sometimes take a long time to finally be ready and face the fears.
Well, sometimes people need that big experience like you had with the Bell's palsy.
Absolutely. It was painful, but in retrospect, I'm so glad that it happens because I think it sped up the process for me. And I just am in gratitude that I listened and I did what I needed to do.
Yeah. And you said that your husband perhaps or your kids hadn't come along by then. You were still single, so that's interesting. So you got into this work literally through your own. I think my initiation was becoming a mother. In terms of healing journeys, how did you find that your partner and kids coming along, maybe halfway through, or definitely once you'd already started, how did that affect you? Because I know it's one thing to talk to clients who have paid me and who respect my opinion. It's a very different thing to be there for your kids and partner who don't necessarily respect you in the same way and definitely aren't paying you. So how did they affect your healing journey?
It was definitely easier to do the transformation before I met John and had kids, and much more enriching and layered being in relationship and parenting. But there was something when I was single of it was simple. There was less complication. I just had to do the work. I knew it was related to my parents and my heritage and all of that. And I could do it in a silo without having to be bothered or challenged by a husband or kids. There's so many different things I could mention, but I'm thinking as you're asking, like one of the first markers was in my marriage, right after I gave birth to my older daughter. My husband had been in publishing and he was not happy at all in publishing. And without getting into dramatic stories, he basically lost his publishing job literally the day after we had our first child and decided then to go to acupuncture school to become an acupuncturist. So what happened is that here was this business that I had that was kind of a hobby, kind of a business. I thought I'm going to do this baby thing, got my husband's salary and health insurance. It'll turn into more of a business later. All of a sudden, literally day one of motherhood, my husband has no job, is going to school for a profession that is wonderful, but not necessarily going to pay all the bills. And it was another one of those moments that forced me into my next thing, which was going to make this hobby a business. The reason why I'm bringing this up around triggers is that my business took off and I loved it. It was great. I had success, but it also meant that I didn't do the mothering thing those first years the same ways that I had intended. We had more childcare. John was also home with the baby because he was a student. I did a lot. I mean, I nursed, all the things. I was with the baby a lot, but it activated inside of me something that I had never even thought about before, which is that for as feminist as I had expected John to take on the traditional masculine roles and for me to take on the traditional feminine roles. But all of a sudden, I was kind of the alpha in the family and he wasn't. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't handle it well and I had resentment. And for a little while there, I really emasculated him, unintentionally, but I would say things that would really cut down his masculinity, make him feel like he wasn't taking care of the family, make him feel like he wasn't aggressive enough. It impacted us in the bedroom also, but I couldn't hold myself back from doing it, even though cognitively I knew it was wrong and I knew that everything was as it should be. I was meant to have this big career. So talk about triggers. I mean, I was triggered all over the place. My trigger caused him triggers. And it took us, I say, like 2 years and me slowly chipping away at the inner work, the looking, not only the old beliefs, but what were the survival instincts that were kicking up inside of me. I felt my man had to take care of me in particular ways, and through all of that, I didn't even see all the ways that this incredible man was taking care of me. He was giving me massages. He was so supportive of my work. He was buying me treats. He was taking care of the kids. He was doing so much, but I didn't see it at that time. It took a number of years for me to understand that we were actually both in our exact right roles in the household. And then it took some time of repair work because that emasculating that I had done had really impacted him.
It's interesting that you say that those roles were the right roles, actually. Has that continued? Have you found more balance, or is that just the way you guys work together?
We've found more balance over the years. We've been married now for 18 years, but I am still the alpha. My career is much bigger than John's. John loves what he does. He's an incredible acupuncturist, and also he's not as ambitious as I am. And through this inner work that I've done, he's become such a teacher because whereas before I felt like, oh, why can't he want more in his career? What I've come to see is that John is happy with who he is without outside validation. It's actually some of my ambition is because I have big work to do in the world, but some of it is because I needed the validation because I never felt good enough. I needed the success to feel better about myself. So he has a full-time job. I have my work. My career is still bigger than his. It definitely still takes up more space in our household. He gets the kids ready in the morning. I hate to cook. I'm still always the emotional go-to parent, the one that, does the doctor's visits, the one that the girls talk to for their emotional needs. He takes care of the traditional household pieces, and we work well that way.
Great. And through that period of time, especially the early years when you were doing your inner work, was he on the same journey? Was he exploring his past? Was he on that same journey similar to you?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Not as much. It's not his way. So there were times, and there still are times, where I get frustrated with that, where I want him to be deeper, or we have conversations about the inner work that I do, but because he's not doing as much, or I should say maybe not in the ways that I do it, which is very intentional and very conscious, we can have some frustrations there. And a little bit back to what I was saying before, it's really taught me a lot, not just about how different people function, but John doesn't seem to need the type of inner work that I do. He has his struggles, as we all do, but he works them out in different ways. He works them out. I love this about him through relaxation, through socializing. He tends to find ways to bring his anxiety down, very different than how I operate.
I think that's so interesting how couples can get maybe this slightly warped view that they have to be exactly the same and then can get frustrated with the differences because they're meant to be best friends and co-parents and perhaps co-workers, and it all gets mixed up. What you've said really resonates with me. I think I'm much more ambitious than you, or I'm ambitious in a very different way to you. I definitely like that validation. And yeah, if I was with someone that was like me, forget it. It wouldn't work. Two of me can't be in a relationship. This finding the balance of what you're looking for in a partner, doing the inner work so you understand where the wound is driving what you look for in another partner, and then finding that balance of where you complement each other. It's not easy. And like you, we've been together 17 years, and every year, because we like to do like a yearly review. Every year I'm like, oh my God, this year I've done so much, I've changed so much. But then every year it's the same, because every year, especially with children and with partners, you can't not evolve. So I love that your partner doesn't necessarily do the same inner work as you. I think we are very much similar in terms of the inner work that we do. You're perhaps more embodied than I am naturally, but I love that giving space to who the other person is. I think I could do that more.
Yeah, I think everyone's got their own histories. It's generational stuff. It's cultural stuff. We're all completely different people. We share some tools, but we're also very different in the way we manage ourselves.
Actually, I'd love to ask Joanna. This is a thing that we discuss quite a lot between ourselves because we both work with the inner child. Andrew deals mostly with men. I deal only with mothers. And we differ in our approach, and we're always exploring what those differences are and whether it is about differences in gender and how they do inner work, how they process differently. I'd love your take on it. So when I teach my clients to inner parent, the inner parent is external to them. It's a being from whom they can learn, practice to receive love because they never got that before. And eventually, if they can, that inner parent can become internalized. But at the beginning, there's absolutely no way that can happen. No way. My clients cannot be their own inner parent. Whereas Andrew does it slightly differently. You go straight to inner parenting within. And you always say that women attach more to their feelings and to the story, and that it's harder for us to do the healing without the story. Whereas you say that men are more able to let go of the story and go straight to the body.
I don't know whether it's different for the sexes. I think that'd be interesting to get your take. I think it's more of a difference in modalities. My modality is all about finding the safety within, taking the responsibility for the repressed emotions, for the parts of you from the past that couldn't explore those emotions, so you can let it go. So it's all an internal process for me.
But women are relational and men are more singular. So that's my explanation of why he has a different take that works. What do you think?
This is such an interesting question. So, of course, I don't have the truth with a capital T, but I'll give my opinion. My sense is it's not about the genders at all, similar to what Andrew was saying. And I actually think the most potent is a combination of both. So, I always say, always coach the what based on the who, and the who that's in front of you in that moment, right? It might be one day a client is attached to the story. It might be on a different session. They're not. In terms of a combination, what I have found across genders is that in order for change and transformation to happen, we need to activate with them more than what I call more than one level of learning and processing. Almost always, one of the levels of learning and processing that at least a little bit needs to be activated is the cognitive level. And that's what you're talking about, Lavinia. The cognitive level is creating cognitive awareness, connecting the dots on a story. ultimately the story doesn't really matter for transformation. But oftentimes, if we can understand origins, if we can see those dots, it helps to then go deeper into another level of learning and processing that can either be heart level, spirit level, or body level. So if we hold an idea in our mind and then go into the somatics, or spirit level is very much about, you don't need to believe in God or be religious, trusting in something bigger than your ego and wisdom that comes in that's bigger than your ego. That external parent, Lavinia, that you're talking about, by the way, is probably some spirit level in there as well. And Andrew, I'm sure you're actually working in addition to the body level, another as well when with your clients. So I think it's all about not activating just one level of learning and processing.
And maybe finding that combination that works for each individual.
Yeah, I'm interested just to get a little bit technical actually about your view on somatic, because it's a word that's bandied around quite a bit at the moment, and I'm playing with it in my language and text at the moment. What's your definition or idea of the meaning of the word?
Two-part answer. So the first is to go back actually to my experience as a ritualist, which is how I came in to this work. And in ritual, one of the things that I love about it is that no matter what we're doing in any ritual, in any rite, in any ceremony, we're taking something intangible and making it tangible, signaling to the psyche the change that we want. Maybe something that we want to release from our lives, something that we want to plant, something that we want to honor, something that's just in our minds, a thought, an idea. And through the ritual, the lighting of the candle, the releasing into the water, right? Whatever the ritual, the eating of something, we're making that idea tangible so that not only can our mind process through it, but our body can own the idea and experience it. The second and partner way that I understand somatics is that whether it's a fear, whether it's a new energy that we want to bring in, whether it's a trauma, whether it's a survival mechanism, we don't just think those things. We hold those things in our body. And so we can't just talk our ways out of it. Even though it's a belief, it shows up in the body and in the nervous system as well. We need to be able to hold space for it in our bodies and get regulated with the fear, with the limiting belief, with the new idea in order to unwind it inside of ourselves. Maybe we want to bring in that archetypal energy of the inner parent. We can't just think it. We need to learn how to hold it inside of ourselves, how to feel it. When we can feel it, then we can leverage it. And then the third part for me on somatics is let's make a body memory. So I'm experiencing, for example, the inner parent. It's not just about in that session, but how can I anchor that new energy into the body?
Yeah,
Okay.
interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
I completely agree. And maybe in rituals, a little bit more feminine energy. I love ritual. And that's actually how I got into this work as well, women's circles. So I think there's something very powerful for women who have been brought up in this patriarchy to be empowered women when actually are we? How do we own our true feminine selves and feel empowered in perhaps a more patriarchal sense? It's not easy being a woman. But back to becoming untriggered before we go too much into like esoteric ritual talk. I'd love to know, firstly, I think we'll focus on the kids because they're such a big part of being an empowered woman and stepping into our feminine, being a mum, the role of being a mum. How have your kids triggered you the most? What's maybe the biggest trigger that you remember with either of your daughters, and how did you overcome it? Which tools did you use?
First of all, so many triggers, but the one that I will focus on today is the one that I think has been the biggest, and it's one that I continue to work on. It's the fear and also the coming to acceptance that I'm not the center of my children's universe anymore. I come from a relationship with my mother. My mother has always loved me very much. And she's also erred on the side of narcissism. And so my whole life, it's been ingrained. My mother is the center of my universe. And I've had to do a lot of work over decades to understand that that's not true, that individuation needs to happen, that I need to be a separate person. And I'll tell you, for all the work that I've done and all the work that I do with my clients and all the ways that I'm informed and transformed and evolved, having a 16-year-old who every year I am less and less the center of her universe, it triggers me a lot. I really have to work on it. Some of it is I still have work to do around what I need my relationship with her to be. You know, I'm using that word on purpose because I feel that as not a great thing inside of me. I need to know that we're always going to be close. I need to know that we're always going to be in deep relationship. Some of that is beautiful and comes from love, but some of that is still, there's more unwinding for me to do in terms of my relationship with my own mother and what I learned there. And so while I want them to be out in the world, I want them to be their own person, I want them to individuate, I also notice that sometimes when I'm making parenting decisions, there's a little part of me that's like, am I doing this in order to keep whatever this unhealthy part of the relationship intact? And I really have to catch myself on that and continually remind myself that I birthed them, I've nurtured them, I'm still there to love them, to put the guardrails, but they're their own people. And I can't feel that my literal, because this is sometimes how it feels inside of me, my literal survival is at stake if they go out. As I've been working through this over the years, I've written a lot of poetry around it. And there's this one line that I know many parents have told me have gotten them over and over again. It's a poem I wrote kind of to my older daughter. And one of the lines is, "You are my destiny and I am your history." That is a truth that I keep on having to come back to and know this is how it is. This is how it's meant to be. And hopefully we will be in beautiful relationship for many, many decades to come, even with that.
Wow. It's so interesting how I've already told you, but that my mother is 1,000% narcissist, or was, not just a bit. How that relationship or that personality, that disorder, whatever you want to call it, that wounding, how that can have different effects. So that's made me much more avoidant attachment. And the thought of being needed by anyone, even my children, to a degree that I'm not comfortable with, or I'm not in control of, or for a time period that I'm not in control of, freaks me out. It's funny, the same wound has created very polar opposite wounds. That mother wound, as we both know, is so crucial for men and women in their healing journey. One of the biggest triggers I think we all have to unpack, not only to be good parents, but to be good people ourselves.
I think a lot of people will resonate with that. There's certainly a lot of narcissistic mothers or people around. In terms of people that resonate with that or experiencing the same thing, is there a starting point? Is there a tool that you're using for this particular wound?
One of the best things to do is to make friends with it. So often when we have a fear, when we have a wound, we reject it, run away from it, hate on it, all the things. But what I would really recommend is to actually lean into it. One easy trauma-informed way to do it is to first name it. What is the actual fear? Is it, I have a fear that I won't be close with my daughter when she's an adult? Or is it, I have a fear that I'm going to be all alone, right? So number one, name it. And then from there, journaling is a really great way. Write to the fear or ask the fear to write to you from its highest wisdom. That's a key word here, or else it'll just go berserk on the fear. But ask it from your highest wisdom. Tell me more about yourself. What do I need to know about you? The fear is really your wounded child writing to you. But then write back, what would the parent, speaking of parenting, what would the ideal parent want this wound to know? Something that no adult ever told it before. And just create that relationship with it. Have a correspondence with it. Be with it.
Bring it out of the shadow, right? Bring it into the consciousness.
Into the consciousness, and back to what I was saying before, get regulated with it. The idea is never to get rid of a fear. We need our fears. The metaphor I always use is fears are like smoke detectors. We need a smoke detector in the kitchen because there could be a real fire. And the smoke detector is going to tell us how to keep ourselves safe and leave the house. The problem with our fears is that oftentimes they're like the smoke detector that thinks that burnt toast is an actual fire. The more we can be in relationship with that smoke alarm, with the fear, the more we're going to know, oh, this is legit. I need to do something about, I need to be scared here. I need to take action. Or no, this is just my inner child who didn't have as many resources as I do now as an adult, thinks that a survival at stake, but really I have this inside of me or this outside of me that contend to this issue right now.
So with the trigger with your eldest daughter, on a scale of burnt toast to fire, where are you now?
That's such a great question. Well, it depends on how much sleep I've gotten, for sure. We're moving towards college applications, so we're in the next phase, but much closer to the burnt toast these days. Other triggers have arisen, I'll tell you that. But for this one, I've been working on it.
And don't you find it so annoying that every time you think you've got a handle on a trigger, it becomes burnt toast? The child changes a bit, and then the toast takes on a whole new shape and size. And you're like, no, I'd kind of got my head around this one. And you can't change because now I feel like I'm a good mom.
Absolutely. And from child to child too. So triggers that I worked through with my older daughter, with my younger one, those same triggers, they don't come on as strong. Some of the work I did with my older daughter helps, but because it's a different human being, it'll show up in a different way.
Totally. I sometimes have an analogy in my head of like a seesaw. We've got 3, and seesaws are often slippy. They're slippy, slidey metal. I've picked one child. If they're all on it, one child's fallen off the end. So I pick that child up and I put it up at the top because I've sorted it. I'm in control. I've managed that trigger. But by the time I've done that, the one that was in the middle is slid off the bottom. So I get back on it, and you can never have all 3 kids on a flat seesaw because it's a seesaw, and it's amazing and it's exhausting and it's relentless.
And I think one of the lessons for me on this, at least, is that it's never going to look perfect. Life is messy. Parenting is messy. And there's no way to do it perfectly. And there's no way to do it without a kid needing a therapist or a coach at some point in their life for whatever's happened. And I've really come to such acceptance with that. I am doing a really good job as a parent. Like, I really believe that. Sometimes I'm doing a shitty job too, but for the most part, I'm doing a good job. And also, there are ways that I am going to impact them that they're going to need to work out for themselves now or later.
I think even if you could raise children without any trauma, as soon as they stepped out the house, they'd be in trouble anyway. Just got to do the best you can, do the work yourself, do the work to be conscious, do the work to heal as much as you can from your past, and then let them go on their journey.
Absolutely. And hopefully you've given them some tools to know how to manage and navigate as the things come up.
Well, thank you
Great.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Joanna. It's been so interesting hearing your insights on what we all do and also how you've navigated your relationship and motherhood as well. It's not a given, and it sounds like you're on the same path as us. And hopefully our listeners have picked up a different perspective on their healing journeys and feel more reassured that they're not the only ones, that we're all in it together.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlin.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.